Should your employees be allowed a second job? The answer is yes, because the benefits for the company far outweigh the risk. Stick around and you'll discover why they should be allowed second jobs, the true risk involved, where most companies go wrong, and key questions that you need to consider. Let's dig in.
You have another job.
What I do between 5:30 p.m. and 1 a.m. is nobody's business but mine and my other businesses.
Welcome back to my show, where leaders increase profitability through employee performance. Make sure to like and subscribe below, because each and every Wednesday I release a new helpful episode. So employees are increasingly working remotely and staying at home, and this has eliminated the commute for a lot of employees. The average commute is just over 30 minutes across North America. And so that's one way to the office, one way back. That's over an hour. That's right, an hour of freed up time per day. And with this increased flexibility, what are employees doing with it? Well, the question is, what are they doing with it? So are they investing it in the job they have, or are they doing other things with it? Are they taking care of personal matters, or are they working a second job? Now, many leaders say that the employees should be working their job during that period of time. However, what we know is that a diminishing margin of return over time when people work longer and longer hours. And when people are working remotely, they keep their computer up. There's not a lot of separation between job and personal life, and they work longer and longer hours. And this results in confusing emails from employees across the organization. In fact, it's kind of like in Gremlins, where they pour water on the gremlins and they just multiply. Now, working remotely often increases the number of emails, and every email you or another leader sends inside your company often results in more and more. So it is a lot like Gremlins. So there are some benefits during this flexibility and with this increased time to allowing a second job or a side hustle for your employees. And there are some right ways to do this and wrong ways. Now, if you do it right, I'm going to share with you some of the benefits that you, your team, and your organization will get. But whatever you do, don't do it like Michael Scott from The Office.
You didn't prepare a presentation at all, did you?
You know what? I had a really rough night, and my boss can back me up on that.
I'm your boss.
My other boss, Mr. Figaro.
You have another job.
What I do between 5:30 p.m. and 1 a.m. is nobody's business but mine and my other businesses.
Are you a collective waitress?
You cannot have a second job if it affects your work here.
It won't.
It did already. I don't even care. Michael, you quit the other job, you're fired here.
So you don't have to do it like Michael Scott at The Office. In fact, I'm going to show you how you can do this with allowing second jobs in a positive way for the company and reap the benefits. And here's just a few. Number one is employee retention. Employees that have second jobs have second incomes. And if they're able to establish a second job that they enjoy, then that is going to be something that's going to be helpful and fruitful to them and help them stay in your organization longer. Whereas if they didn't have that second job and that second income, they might be looking for greener pastures, for a higher pay raise, or even expecting a promotion inside your organization. Number two is fresh ideas. Many employees that have second jobs are interacting with people in different industries than they would have if they would have stayed just insular to their current company. And this exposes them to new ideas. As a coach, I've worked with executives that have side contracts and side hustles and other projects they work on. And a lot of this involves new technology that they can bring back to their organization. A stronger network. Man, it's great to be connected outside the organization, because if you need to hire someone new or you need to bring somebody in as a consultant, you've been exposed to other people and other networks outside your company. And this can be useful for the long haul for not just the employee and the team, but also for the organization. Confidence. This is a tough one to explain sometimes, but when people that have second incomes, they don't feel scared and just tied and meek inside their organization. They often will speak their mind because they have that second income. They fear less, and thus they speak more. And this is really important for organizations where it's so easy to be surrounded by a bunch of just yes people nodding their heads to ideas of the senior leaders, when really we as senior leaders, we need feedback from employees to help us improve and help us get to the next level. Energized. One of the big ways that second jobs can only do is it can actually energize employees. It doesn't necessarily just bring them down because they're expending so much energy outside of work. In fact, When I was working for a company and I had a second job as a coach, I felt renewed and engaged more at my job because I was able to refocus my attention outside of my normal job. And that allowed me to have an expression of creativity and innovation to bring back. And it was a big benefit for the company and for me. And the last one to think about are new skills. And for example, when I was pursuing coaching, I actually honed my coaching skills outside the organization and was able to bring it back inside the organization, which I eventually negotiated on my annual review. We're at a certain cohort of coaching clients inside the company. And frankly, I was able to do a lot better job for them as a coach because I'd already honed my skills out on the outside. Next up are the risks, because you don't want to go forward with allowing second jobs unless you've really thought this through. So I'm going to give you some of the big risks where many companies go wrong. First off, with the risk. Number one is distraction. When you have a second job or you have an employee with a second job outside the company, it is easy for them to be distracted because maybe they aren't fully engaged in their workday because they're thinking about their second job and what they need to do for that, when you really need them to be present and fully engaged in the work they're doing. Number two is disorganization. When I had a second job, that was one of the biggest challenges I had to address out of the gate. When an employee can't stay organized because they're working two jobs, both jobs suffer. And of course, you want them to be organized on the job you have. And it's really important to think about how you can help them from an organizational standpoint be successful. Number three is lack of commitment. If someone's working a second job, how do you know they're still committed to the vision that you've declared for your team and that they're going to stay committed to that over the long haul? The number four risk is confidentiality, because there are certain things that employees are using, tools are using, conversations are having, new ideas that they're being exposed to inside your organization. How will you make sure that those are not a risk of being disclosed at their second job? Now let's talk a little bit about where most companies go wrong when it comes to allowing second jobs. Number one is just ignoring that they even exist. This is sort of like the classic don't ask, don't tell. There are employees in your organization today, probably with second jobs, but the key is, are people who know about it? They just are ignoring it. And when you ignore it, what it does is it sets you up for failure and that employee for failure over the long haul because they're not able to really bring those two together to reap the benefits. Number two is lack of clarity on what the policy is. What is your company's direction? What do you want this to be like when it comes to second jobs? If you just say no, then they're probably going to pursue it secretly on the outside. But then there's going to be this tension. Okay, there's going to be this anxiety level between the managers that know about it and the employees who are doing it. And it just eats up the bandwidth of people because they're concerned about maintaining certain personas without letting other people know. Why not just get the cards on the table, which we're going to talk about in a second, and let everybody have a productive conversation about it. Number three is being inconsistent. So if some managers allow some employees to have second jobs and others don't, it just creates a lot of confusion. It also can set you up for all kinds of employee litigation issues, perhaps down the road. So the key is in this whole thing is just to craft a policy and then be consistent with it. Now what I want to walk you through are the 10 big questions that you should be asking yourself today when it comes to allowing employees to have a second job. Number one, and this is number one for a reason, but how much risk is there to the company? So if you are a company that's making nuclear reactors, you're going to be pretty careful with the second jobs that you allow. But if your company is making hamburgers or making toys, then it may be a little bit different in terms of how you approach it. Number two, which industries or companies are prohibited from having a second job with? So this is really important because you don't want your employees obviously engaging with the competition, or maybe you don't want them, say you run a social media company, social media marketing company, you don't want them taking the ideas that they're learning at work and applying them as a consultant outside the organization, because they're effectively becoming more competition for you. Number three is what types of work are allowed. Number four is, must it be cleared by a manager first? let your managers know if they need to be the police on this. And if so, what's the kind of conversation that they can have and the tools that you can provide to help them be successful? Number 5 is, what are the normal working hours when a second job is not allowed? Is it 8 to 5? Is it 10 to 6? What is that time where they cannot be working on second job activity and they need to be focused on your work? Ideally, you're establishing this throughout your organization, so you're getting everybody rowing in the same direction during the same working hours. This also helps with availability of when people are trying to get in touch with each other to brainstorm or to solve problems. Number 6 is, what do managers do when it seems like the employee's quality of work is suffering? If employees are missing deadlines, if the quality of work is failing, and the managers suspect it's related to the second job, what do managers do? Do they put them on a performance improvement plan? Did they get HR involved? Are they allowed some extra leeway in certain situations? But just don't leave your managers out there hanging. Give them specific direction on what to do. Number 7, do you allow full-time, part-time, or contract work? Be specific about this. If your employees work 7 days on and 7 days off, maybe having a second full-time job isn't that big a deal, because they have those 7 days where they can work free in another role. But if they've already got a full-time job that's every day of the week, it's going to be tough to allow full-time work. So be specific on that versus contract projects versus part-time work. Number 8 is really big. It's, are employees allowed to be on boards? Sometimes senior leaders get invited to be on boards of other companies, which typically companies look favorable upon, because it allows them to increase their visibility and increase their level of networking with other organizations. And these organizations may be symbiotic in nature, but also you've got situations where certain employees are invited to be on nonprofit boards. So how are you going to handle the whole question around boards? And do you want them to come to you to ask for permission, or is that allowed within reason? Number 9, what company resources can be used? This is huge. Can employees use their computers for their second job? Can they use their phones? Can they use their other work devices? Or is this something that needs to be looked at in a way from a legal standpoint? So it's important to make this consideration and make sure you're really clear with your employees. Number 10 is, can they mention their day job in their second job? Or can they post about each company on social media? Is it going to be too confusing to suppliers and customers, or is it not going to create any problem? So this is really important to address these 10 specific questions. And you may be a little bit overwhelmed because it can take some time to get through them. So just pick out 1 or 2 for your next step and bring them up in your next staff meeting for conversation. A longer term perspective on this is to develop a policy for your corporate handbook and give out some specific directions to employees, because if you do this right, it can be a great way to increase profitability, increase employee retention, and reap the benefits for creativity and innovation and network, all the benefits that we mentioned in this video. But you've got to take the next step to figure out what's the best way to do this. Now, if this is something that you're really wanting to take the next step on, make sure you leave a comment below and let me know what the questions are that you're struggling with, and I'll make sure to answer them. And also, you can email me at ben@benfanning.com. That's right, that's my email address. And I'll get back to you with any question responses that you don't feel comfortable leaving here on YouTube.